I opened my door like I always have. For my son, for love, for hope. I washed the sheets, lit lavender, told myself this was what good mothers do. But somewhere between the cigarette smoke and the silence, I began to vanish in my own home. This isn't just a story about letting go. It's about finally choosing yourself. When Alex called and said they just needed a little place to land for a bit, I didn't hesitate. I've always been that kind of mother. Open door, open fridge, open arms. He said Kyla, his girlfriend, had left her job at the spa. Something about burnout and finding her true path. And he'd just gotten laid off from the startup he was so proud of. I told him they could stay in the guest room. I even washed the comforter and put a lavender sachet in the closet. I thought that was the kind of thing good mothers did. The first few days were quiet enough. They mostly stayed in their room, came out late, shuffled around in socks. I kept to my routine. Morning tea, crossword, feeding the blue jays in the backyard. It was fine, until I noticed the smell. At first, I thought it was drifting in from the neighbors. Then I walked past the laundry room and saw the flick of an orange ember through the screen door. Kyla, barefoot, with one of those long menthol cigarettes, blowing smoke like it was incense in a yoga studio. I opened the door gently and said, "Honey, I'd appreciate it if you didn't smoke near the house. The smoke gets trapped under the eaves." She looked at me through her lashes, like I'd just asked her to move a mountain. "Oh yeah, sure," she said, dragging the smoke one last time before flicking it into my flower bed. Just like that, right between the marigolds. I didn't say anything. Not then. I just scooped the butt out of the dirt with a spoon and dropped it into the trash. That night, when I went to bed, I could still smell it. Faint but clinging, like disappointment. The next day, I brought it up to Alex. We were sitting at the kitchen table. He was scrolling on his phone, laughing at something he didn't share with me. I mentioned the cigarette, tried to keep my voice light. I know she's used to different rules, but this is still my home. And I have asthma. Not bad, but... He looked up, eyebrows raised, and gave me that patient smile that always meant he was about to dismiss me. "Mom, please don't start. You're making it weird. It's just a cigarette." I nodded. "It's not just the cigarette, sweetheart. It's the principle of the thing." He sighed. "You're creating tension. We're trying to figure stuff out and you're making it stressful. Maybe, it's just a thought, but maybe you could stay at Aunt Janet's for a few weeks. Give things space." I blinked. At first, I thought I'd misheard him. Janet lives in Bend, 4 hours away. She's my younger sister, and she means well, but she collects cats and doesn't believe in turning the heat above 60. "Are you asking me to leave my own house?" I asked, careful not to let my voice rise. He shrugged. "Not leave. Just cool off. We're all adults here." I looked at him, at the beard he hadn't trimmed, the shirt he'd borrowed from my late husband's side of the closet without asking. I looked at the crumbs on the counter from the sandwich they'd made and hadn't cleaned up. The way they left dishes in the sink overnight like it was a college dorm. I didn't say anything. Not then. I just wiped the counter and went upstairs to my bedroom, the one place in the house that still smelled like me. That night, I heard laughter from their room, muffled and private. I lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling fan, its slow, lazy spin, and wondered when exactly my home had stopped being mine. I remembered when Alex was little and afraid of thunderstorms. He'd crawl into bed beside me, clutching his blanket like it could protect him from the thunder. I used to whisper, "You're safe here. Nothing bad happens at home." It hit me then. He didn't believe that anymore. Not for me, at least. I stared at the shadows on the ceiling until morning. The next morning, I baked a pie. Not because anyone asked for it, or even because I particularly felt like it, but because that's what I do when I need to remember who I am. Granny Smith's, a bit of lemon zest, cinnamon, the crust from scratch, not the frozen kind Kyla brought in from Whole Foods last week. I even used the old ceramic pie dish Alex made in high school art class, the one he said was abstract, though it was really just lopsided. I set the pie on the counter to cool and called out to them, gently, not loudly, that I'd made something if they were hungry. No response. A little while later, I heard the front door click open. I peeked through the window and saw a delivery driver walking up with takeout bags. Thai, I think. 2 sets of chopsticks. They took the food to their room, shut the door, and that was that. I sliced a piece for myself and sat at the kitchen table, listening to the sound of their muffled laughter through the floor vent. I chewed slowly, though I couldn't taste much. Later that afternoon, I walked past the downstairs bathroom and caught a whiff, sharp and unmistakable. Smoke. I pushed open the door and saw the small bathroom window cracked, an ashtray perched on the sill like a dare. The smell clung to the curtains. I pulled them down and took the ashtray, still warm, to the trash. That night I tried again. Sat Alex down while Kyla was out. This can't keep happening, I told him. I have a right to feel safe and comfortable in my own home. He rubbed his temples like I was giving him a headache. Mom, can we not do this? You're overreacting. She's not lighting bonfires in the living room. Would it matter if she were? I asked. He stood shaking his head. You're turning this into a thing. Again. Just let it go. So I did what any reasonable woman would do when her own son gaslights her into silence. I started writing things down. A little notebook I kept in the drawer beside the toaster. Nothing dramatic. Just dates, times, what I saw, what I smelled. I wasn't sure what I planned to do with it, but it felt like a tether to sanity. A few days later, I came home from the pharmacy to find Kyla standing at the kitchen counter, holding my notebook. She was reading it out loud in a sing-song voice. May 12th, cigarette in bathroom again. May 14th, crumbs in the sofa. May 15th, woke up to music at 1:30 a.m. She laughed like it was the funniest thing she'd ever heard. Alex leaned in the doorway, arms crossed, not stopping her. You keeping a diary on us, Susan? She asked. That's kinda creepy. It's my house, I said quietly, trying to keep the tremor out of my voice. I have the right to notice what happens in it. Oh, I see, she said, stepping closer. You want to be some kind of hall monitor, Grandma? Cute. Alex didn't say a word. Not one. That night, I sat on the edge of my bed, notebook back in my hands, and stared at the shaky loops of my own handwriting. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't. But it's funny how quickly you can start to doubt that when no one listens. In the hallway, I could hear the hum of their laughter again, low and private. I thought of Paul, how he used to laugh like that after work when I'd burn the garlic bread or drop the remote between the couch cushions. His laugh always made me feel seen, not mocked. Now, even the walls in this house felt like they'd turned against me. I didn't cry. Not then. I just placed the notebook in my nightstand drawer, turned off the lamp, and lay back. The silence of the room pressed down on me like a second blanket. I thought, for the first time, that maybe Alex had been right. Maybe I had made it weird. Maybe I was the problem. But then I smelled it again. Faint, acrid, seeping through the vent, and I knew I wasn't imagining a damn thing. The next morning, I made my decision over coffee. Not the fancy kind Kyla insisted on with her oat milk and agave syrup, but the drip pot I'd used for 30 years, stained on the sides and loyal as a dog. I stood by the window, fingers wrapped around the chipped mug, and watched a squirrel dart across the back fence. The house was quiet for once. I liked that. When Alex came down around 11, rubbing sleep from his eyes like he was still 16, I met him in the kitchen. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't make a speech. I just said, "You and Kyla need to find your own place. I'll give you until the end of the month." He blinked. Just blinked, like I'd asked him to cancel his Netflix subscription. "You're kidding," he said, grabbing a glass from the cabinet. "I'm not," I replied, keeping my voice level. "This arrangement isn't working." He filled his glass with water, drank half of it, then leaned back against the counter like he was trying to pose for sympathy. Mom, you know we're trying. I've got interviews lined up. Kyla's doing that freelance wellness coaching thing. She vapes in the hallway, Alex. She curses at the cat. And you... I stopped myself before the rest tumbled out like floodwater. He narrowed his eyes. So this is about Kyla. It's about my peace, I said, and my health, and the fact that I no longer feel comfortable in my own home. He slammed the glass down just hard enough to make me flinch. Jesus, you're being so cold. I didn't think you'd throw us out over a few disagreements. You're not being thrown out. You're being asked to grow up. He stormed out after that, muttering something I didn't catch. A door slammed upstairs. I heard Kyla's voice rising, then falling. I didn't go up. I went out to the backyard and clipped the dead heads off my roses. Later that day, I found my favorite coffee mug shattered in the sink, buried under greasy dishes, the one Paul gave me on our 20th anniversary. It had said, "Still wild after all these years." The letters were faded now, but it was mine. I found the pieces wedged under a plate crusted with something yellow and congealed. I didn't say anything, just picked up the fragments and dropped them into the trash. That night, I walked across the street to see Marge, my neighbor of 20 years. She opened the door in her slippers, took one look at me, and said, "Sit down. I'll make tea." I didn't unload everything, just sketched the edges of the story. Smoke in the bathroom, the attitude, the silence from my son. She nodded like she'd heard it before. "You know," she said as she poured the tea, "you're not a guest in your own life. Don't act like one." I slept badly again, my dreams full of smoke alarms and half-packed boxes. In the morning I called a lawyer, not my old one, the one who sent Christmas cards and always addressed Paul in the letterhead. No, someone new, a younger woman with a firm voice. She told me, plainly and without drama, that since Alex and Kyla weren't paying rent and had no formal lease, they were guests. Legally. I had the right to ask them to leave. When I told Alex this over dinner, he barely looked up from his phone. "Wow," he said. "You called a lawyer. That's cool. Real family of you." Kyla chimed in from the living room, voice syrupy. "Maybe you should have just told us how miserable we make you." "Oh wait, you did, with your little notebook." I stood there in the kitchen, staring at the casserole I'd made and now didn't want to eat. "You have 2 weeks," I said. "No more." That night, they stayed out late. I heard the front door open after midnight, the creak of the stairs, muffled laughter. I didn't care where they'd been. I just wanted the days to pass. Then 2 days later, I opened TikTok by accident. I'd been checking the weather, hit the wrong icon. A video started playing. Low resolution, shaky hands. But I knew the kitchen. My kitchen. And I knew her voice. "Living with my boyfriend's overbearing mom who keeps a surveillance diary on us. Pray for me," the caption read. She panned the phone across the room, showing my handwriting in the open notebook. My name wasn't mentioned, but the comments... Oh, the comments. Laughing faces, people calling me a boomer, a control freak, a Karen. I closed the app, turned off the phone, and sat at the table in the dim kitchen. The pie dish was still on the counter. Empty now. I rested my hands on the cool ceramic surface. The ache in my chest wasn't anger. Not yet. It was the ache of being turned into a joke in the house where I had once sung lullabies, where I'd folded baby clothes, where I had kissed skinned knees, and tucked my son in every night with a kiss on the forehead and a prayer. Now I was a punchline, an inconvenience. I looked at the calendar on the fridge. 13 more days. 13 more days. On the 12th night, I woke to the shriek of the smoke alarm. It wasn't a dream. My body knew before my mind did. The sharp smell of something burning, the distant mechanical scream echoing down the hallway. I was up in seconds, old knees protesting, robe tangled around my legs. When I reached the hallway, smoke curled from under the bathroom door like a slow whisper. I flung it open and found a towel smoldering on the tile floor, a scorched cigarette beside it, burned almost to the filter. I grabbed the towel with the edge of my robe and flung it into the tub, turning on the faucet full blast. The steam hit me like a slap. I opened every window, every door. My hands were shaking so hard I dropped the hallway phone twice before I finally managed to punch in 911. The fire truck arrived in under 7 minutes. Lights lit up the street like a parade gone wrong. Neighbors came out in pajamas, and I stood on my front lawn barefoot, smoke clinging to my hair, the adrenaline still pumping. A young firefighter, no older than Alex, asked me calm, practiced questions while his partner checked the bathroom. "No structural damage," he said eventually. "Just smoke and some scorched linens. Could have been worse." Kyla appeared then, stumbling out the front door in a hoodie and leggings, mascara smudged under her eyes. "Is everything okay?" she asked like a girl who'd just come back from a dream. I didn't answer her. I was looking at the melted patch on the bathroom floor, the blackened edge of a bath mat that used to be cream. The firefighter followed my gaze. "Ma'am, do you know how the fire started?" I looked at Kyla. She shrugged. "It must have been, I don't know, maybe something caught on the hair straightener." The firefighter raised an eyebrow but didn't press. He wrote up an incident report. I watched him fill in the boxes. Residential, no injuries, smoking material suspected. By the time they left, it was nearly 3 a.m. I sat in the living room, wrapped in a blanket that still smelled faintly of last Christmas, listening to the quiet hum of my old house settling after the storm. At 9, I called Officer Ramirez, our neighborhood's community liaison. He'd come once before when a neighbor's teenager tried to siphon gas from cars. I explained everything, calmly, without tears. I told him about the cigarette, the fire, the way I was being ignored in my own home. He was kind but firm. "You have the right, ma'am. If they're guests and not tenants, and there's no written agreement, you can ask them to leave. You can also file a formal notice if you prefer paper to words." I preferred paper. That afternoon, I typed up a letter on my old desktop, printed 2 copies, signed them at the bottom with a hand that barely shook. I gave one to Alex. He didn't even read it before tossing it on the coffee table. "This is ridiculous," he said. "Are you trying to humiliate us?" "No," I said. "I'm trying to protect myself." Kyla disappeared into their room after that. Alex grabbed his jacket and left without another word. When he didn't come home that night, the silence felt different. Not like peace, like a held breath. The next day, she came down wearing sunglasses indoors, like that would hide the scowl on her face. She poured cereal, left milk rings on the counter, cranked the music on her phone just loud enough to be grating. Passive-aggressive warfare in sweatpants. I let her. I didn't react. I called the locksmith. By sunset, the locks were changed. I texted Alex to let him know. No reply. On the 3rd day, I saw a car idling in front of the house. Not Alex's. A friend's, maybe? Kyla stood on the porch with a suitcase and a look of pure theater. She didn't say goodbye, just walked down the steps and slammed the car door behind her like the end of a sitcom. I watched from the upstairs window, not smiling. That night, I swept the floor of the guest room. A stray bobby pin, a sticky ring on the nightstand, an empty vape cartridge tucked under the bed. I gathered them in a paper towel, tied it shut, and tossed it in the outside bin. Alex returned the next afternoon. His eyes were tired. He looked older suddenly. He walked in without knocking, like it was still his. "You didn't have to go nuclear," he said. "You didn't have to ask me to leave," I replied. He stood in the entryway, jacket still on, like he wasn't sure if he was welcome. I didn't offer him tea. I didn't ask how he was doing. We stood in silence for a long time, the air thick with everything we weren't saying. "I need to stay a few more nights," he said eventually. "I'll sleep on the couch." I didn't nod. I just turned and walked back to the kitchen. That night, I locked my bedroom door. I'd never done that before. Not in this house. Not even when Paul was away on business trips and the kids were small. It felt unnatural, but necessary. In the dark, I lay awake, eyes open, heart strangely steady. I had changed the locks. I had filed the papers. I had drawn the line. And now, I waited to see what he would do with it. The next morning, I found Alex in the kitchen, barefoot and hunched over a bowl of cereal like a teenager after detention. He looked up, spoon halfway to his mouth, as if surprised I still existed. I didn't speak. I put on the kettle, measured out tea leaves into the strainer, and sat down across from him. For a while, we just sat like that, the silence not quite comfortable, not quite hostile. Then he said, "She's staying at her sister's in Beaverton. Probably just for a few days. She needed space." I didn't answer. I watched the steam curl from the kettle, slow and elegant, like it had all the time in the world. "She's upset," he added, as if I didn't know. "Says you ambushed us." "You started a fire," I said. "That was an accident," he shot back. "And it wasn't me." "No," I said. "But you stood by and let it happen." He pushed back his chair, stood up too fast. "You always make everything sound like I'm a child. I'm not a kid anymore." "No," I said. "You're not. And yet here you are." He scoffed, grabbed his keys, and walked out without another word. He stayed gone the whole day. I went about my business like I was alone in the world, which, in many ways, I was. I changed the sheets in the guest room, wiped the counters, made soup I didn't eat. I watered the ferns. I opened all the windows to let the air move again. The house felt like it was exhaling. That evening, he came home with a bouquet, grocery store flowers, carnations and baby's breath, the kind people pick up last minute on Valentine's Day when they've forgotten what love should look like. He held them out like a truce. "I don't want us to fight," he said. "Let's just hit reset." I looked at the bouquet. Then I looked at him. I didn't take them. "We don't get to hit reset, Alex. This isn't a video game." He let his arm drop. "I know I've been out of line. I've just been stressed. Everything's been falling apart lately." "And I'm the safety net," I said quietly. "That's all I've been for years." He didn't deny it. That part almost made me laugh. We ended up sitting at the kitchen table again, this time with tea between us. He was gentler now, even vulnerable. Asked about the neighbor's garden, about my knees, about my bridge club. I softened, just a little, and let the conversation float between us like an old song we both still remembered the words to. But then he went to bed, and I did something I hadn't done in a long time. I checked my email before sleep. There was one from the bank, a security alert. It said someone had attempted to log in using my credentials. 3 failed attempts, all within 10 minutes of each other, from a location matching Alex's phone's IP. And then I saw it, the automatic flag. An attempt to request access to my 401k account had been initiated but blocked. I stared at the screen, not breathing, not blinking. I printed it out, each page clicking into the tray with mechanical precision. Then I reached for the manila folder I'd started last week. Documents, receipts, copies of the eviction notice, even a screen-captured transcript of Kyla's TikTok video. I slid the new printouts inside, closed the folder, and pressed it flat beneath both palms. The next morning I walked to the bank. My usual teller, Rita, recognized me. I'd known her since she was in braces. I asked to speak to the branch manager. We opened a new account. Name only, no joint access, no linked profiles. I transferred my pension funds, closed the old one. It took over an hour. At the end of it, I felt like I'd just peeled off something sticky and rotting that had been clinging to me for years. After the bank, I went to the attorney's office. Ms. Jensen greeted me with that calm, steady look she always wore, the kind that said she dealt with messes like mine every day and didn't judge. "I need to revise the will," I said. And I want everything locked down. No power of attorney. No access. Not anymore. She nodded, pulled out the paperwork, and began. Her pen scratched quickly across the pages while I read through every line. Slowly, deliberately. I signed. My hand didn't shake this time. When I got home, the house was still. I made myself lunch, a sandwich, pickle on the side, plain chips. I ate at the counter. I didn't check my phone. Later, I heard Alex come in. He didn't call out, just opened the fridge, rustled through the cabinets, moved like someone still clinging to the shape of belonging. I let him be. The next morning, the flowers were gone. Wilted, trashed. He didn't say anything. Neither did I. But that night, I heard him on the phone, voice low in the living room, words drifting up the stairs. "Just give it a few days," he said. "She's cracking. I can tell. Just be sweet for a little while. She'll back off." And there it was, the final crack of the mask. He wasn't sorry. He was stalling. I walked back to my room, closed the door softly, and opened the manila folder again. I added a sticky note. "He thinks I'm still soft." Then I reached for my planner, flipped to the end of the month, and circled the date in blue ink. 2 more days, and I was done. The morning of the last day arrived quietly. No grand drama, just the sound of the garbage truck grinding past the curb and the faint ticking of the kitchen clock I'd bought at Target 15 years ago. I stood at the window with my cup of tea, the same as always, except everything had changed. Alex was still asleep on the couch. I could see the rise and fall of the blanket I'd crocheted during Paul's final chemo year. It used to be his favorite. Now it was just another thing my son had claimed without asking. I didn't wake him. I didn't slam any drawers or clatter plates. I moved through the house like a guest checking out of a hotel, methodical, quiet, detached. Room by room, I cleaned. Not out of duty, but because it was mine, and I wanted it to be whole again before I left it behind. In the guest room, I opened the closet and pulled down a dusty plastic bin I hadn't touched in years. Inside, folded neatly, was the blue cardigan, the one I wore on our last real trip. Paul and I had gone to Sedona, before the scans turned dark. The knit was soft, faded at the cuffs, smelling faintly of cedar and the past. Beneath it, tucked in the folds, was the envelope I didn't even remember placing there. His handwriting on the front. "Susan, when you need it." I sat on the bed and opened it. The letter was short, typical Paul. No flowery language, just truth. "If you're reading this, you're probably being too generous again. You always gave more than you should have. Stop that. Take what's yours, and for God's sake, go somewhere warm." I folded it back slowly and placed it in my purse. That decided it. By noon, I had everything packed. 2 suitcases, 1 carry-on, the folder with my legal documents. I'd already called the real estate agent, Pamela Greer, sharp as a tack, who'd sold 3 homes on our street in the past year. The for sale sign would go up tomorrow. I'd signed everything electronically. She never even asked why I was leaving. Just said, "We'll get you a good price, sweetheart." I booked the flight that afternoon, one way to Tucson. Warm, dry, quiet. I found a furnished rental online, just outside of the city. It had a little porch and a view of desert hills. The pictures showed saguaro cacti, wide open skies, and not a single person in sight. Heaven. Alex woke up around 3. He shuffled into the kitchen, rubbing his eyes, still smelling faintly of last night's beer. He didn't even notice the luggage. "I think I'll order a pizza," he said. "You want anything?" I looked at him. Really looked. This man wasn't a boy anymore, but he'd built his adulthood on the crumbling shoulders of others. First me, then Kyla, and still me again. And somehow, he believed that was love, that depending on someone until they broke was the same as being close. "No," I said. "I'm leaving." He turned, confused. Where? To the airport, I said. There's a flight in 2 hours. He laughed. Light. Awkward. Wait, what? You're serious? Yes. The house is listed. The locks will be changed tomorrow. You'll need to find somewhere else. You're just, what, running away? No, I said. I'm going towards something. He blinked. You're actually doing this. You'd really leave me like this? You left me a long time ago, Alex, I said softly. You just never moved out. He didn't follow me out the door. Maybe he didn't believe I'd actually go. Maybe he thought this was just another bluff in a game I never agreed to play. Outside, the sun was low, casting long gold shadows across the driveway. I rolled my suitcase to the curb and climbed into the Uber. The driver, a young woman with braids and kind eyes, glanced at the address and said, Heading somewhere nice? I hope so, I said. I really do. At the airport, I checked my bags, made it through security, and found a seat near the gate. I pulled out Paul's letter again and ran my fingers over the ink. The hum of travel surrounded me. Announcements, laughter, a toddler shrieking with joy, not pain. I exhaled. I had been the floor they walked on, the fridge that never emptied, the nightlight that never turned off. But I wasn't that anymore. I was Susan. I was 68. I had arthritis in my left knee, a stubborn patch of gray in my roots, and a brand new lease signed for a desert cottage that smelled of mesquite and possibility. The boarding call came. I stood, slipped on my cardigan, and walked toward the gate. I didn't look back.